You've all heard it and probably even said it, right? The right to protest is a fundamental American right. It's a highly sacred pillar of our society. Not just regular sacred, but a highly sacred pillar of our society, right? It's a tool for the voiceless to be able to speak. It's a tool for common people like you and me to be able to speak our voice and let our government know what it is that we want from them when we feel that our senators and our Congress people and our other leaders are not conveying the message the way that we hope that it would be conveyed when we voted them in, right? But what if I told you that that First Amendment right, with all the tools that it gives us, such as freedom of speech, freedom of press, right? The right to peaceably assemble, the right to protest, and the right to petition our government for grievances, all of that in the First Amendment, along with the freedom of religion, of course, but that's not central to this particular argument, right? What if I told you that the way that we protest today, the way that we hold that amendment is incomplete? You see, the First Amendment, it doesn't just protect the right to assemble, right? It specifically states in the Constitution, in the First Amendment, that it protects the right to peaceably assemble, meaning that you can go to a protest and have a reasonable expectation of not meeting violence from protesters or counter-protesters or law enforcement, right? To peaceably assemble. It's a clear line, right? And there's a difference between a peaceful protest and a riotous mob. And we're going to talk about that here today, okay? We're going to explore a lot of the many ways that these protests and these riots and these gatherings, let's call them for now, right? We're going to take a look at whether or not they're constitutional, because many of the protests that you see, many of the protests that you might even actually be attending, or many of the protests that you may be boarding up your windows and protecting your business against, may not even be constitutional. And we're going to talk about that here today. Okay. See, we have to understand that the distinction on protests is very vital. Okay. So let's go back to the original text of the Constitution, and I'm going to read it to you here verbatim. Okay. The First Amendment says, I quote, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." Okay, now, the forefathers, they didn't just willy-nilly toss in that word peaceably, right? They did it for a reason. They didn't just snatch it out of the air. It wasn't trying to make the Constitution sound wordy and pretty and intelligent and all of that kind of stuff. They put it in there for a very reason. And the reason why the founders put that in is because they didn't want dissenters to be able to tear down the foundation. They wanted you to have the freedom of dissension, to speak, to vote against, but they gave you the very tools to be able to do that with, okay? And violence was not one of them, right? A riot, a mob, breaking laws is not one of them. All right. And that's what many protests are actually doing these days. So, the First Amendment protects us, and it's supposed to be there to also protect the people, the protesters themselves. Okay. Right. It protects peaceful assemblies, but it doesn't protect violent riots. Right. It offers zero legal recourse to you if you break a law. The second you make the transition from a peaceful protest into lawlessness, you're no longer constitutionally protected, right? And the legal standard is pretty specific on this, right? The government cannot shut down a protest simply because they don't agree with the message, right? We can all agree on that, right? It can't stop a protest because of a vague fear of what might happen. I think we're all in agreement on that, right? But when speech and actions cross a line into violence, property destruction, It's what the Supreme Court calls, I quote, imminent lawless action. Once it crosses the line into imminent lawless action, it loses all of its constitutional protections, right? Now, while there's no single definition for that, right, it generally goes by riot laws, the Supreme Court do. They go by riot laws, which define a riot as a public disturbance where a group commits acts of violence that create a clear danger of injury or property damage. See, a lot of people forget about the whole property damage part of it. They think that they can go out there and interfere with law enforcement, right? That they can throw rocks at vehicles and that they can set vehicles on fire in the middle of the street, stand on them waving flags and protesting. But they can't. That's unconstitutional. It's against the law. Okay? A protest that includes those things is no longer a peaceable assembly. That's when it crosses the line into a riot. Okay? And we have to have this as the bedrock foundation of our society, right? Otherwise, society's just collapsed and we live in anarchy, right? I mean, we're kind of living in anarchy now, but we still have a semblance of government right at this point. And people, the government on both sides need to take accountability for this, and they need to pull themselves back. They need to pull the rhetoric back. They need to allow people to have peaceable protests, but at the same time, those peaceable protesters need to allow law enforcement officers to do their job, right? And there's a right way and a wrong way of doing this, okay? I'm going to show you a video here, right, of ICE agents going into a house in Minnesota to make some arrests, and it's surrounded by protesters, right? And while they're loud and annoying as hell, they are perfectly legal in what they're doing. I mean, sort of, you know, there might be some trespass laws or something that they're breaking, but for the most part, they're legal in what they're doing. Let's watch.
It might be a little dangerous. Thank you. Thank you. A little bit more. A little back behind him. All right, you're good.
All right, so that, even though it was loud and even though it was annoying, was legal. All right, they didn't interfere with the officers. They didn't stop anybody. They didn't get violent. They didn't get in the way, right? They just stand around banging the drum, right? That's civil rights. That's the First Amendment for you. We have that, right? In fact, it was the civil rights movement itself where nonviolent resistance became a tool that, you know, it was mastered in the civil rights era. And that's the type of resistance that needs to be done these days. Not blocking the cars of the law enforcement officers, not trying to interfere with their arrests, not trying to interfere with them doing their jobs. Because the truth is you don't know details. You look out there and you see ICE officers arresting somebody, and you don't know the reason why. You don't. You think you do, but you don't, right? And you can say that it doesn't matter, but it does. It does. You have no idea, and you don't have a right to see a warrant. You do not have the right to see the warrant. The person in question has the right to see the warrant. His legal teams have the right to see the warrant. You do not have a right to see a warrant. You demanding from ICE to see a warrant and trying to interfere is you breaking the law. That's all it is. And the second you do something, the second you throw a brick, the second you throw a rock, the second you smash a window, the second you graffiti something, the second you refuse to follow legal orders from the law enforcement officer, you are now a criminal. Sorry. That's the way it is. You are now a criminal. A lot of people have trouble whenever it comes to understanding the right for peaceable protest and what you can and can't do, right? Is, for one thing, we have a hyper-polarized 24/7 news cycle that is going to feed you information based off of their particular bias, right? You got mainstream media, which is mostly left focused, and they're going to do things, and they're going to try to make the government look bad. They're going to try to make the people look like victims, right? That's their direction. That's the leaning left, okay? And then you've got others like Fox News. They're going to turn around and they're going to do the entire opposite, right? They're going to lean everything right toward the administration. The administration was in the right. The protesters are in the wrong. And the truth is somewhere in between, of course. And you've got new media, you've got internet media, independent media who are out there, and they're showing you various different truths that are going on here. And so we can actually paint a full picture when we look at everything in combination, but there's also a lot of bullshit to cut out, right? Which brings us to today's problem, right? That the idea of being able to use violence or interfere with law enforcement is okay when it's not. See, we see footage of buildings burning and you got Mayor Karen Bass, who gets out there and calls it a mostly peaceful protest. Well, let me tell you something. Mostly peaceful is not entirely peaceful, right? And the Constitution says that we have the right to a peaceable assembly, not a mostly peaceable assembly, to a peaceable assembly. It's not the same thing. So sorry about that, Mayor Bass, but you know. All right. So when we teach people to block highways, you know, or trap commuters for hours, what the hell happens if you're blocking the highway and you're holding up an ambulance? And what happens if that ambulance that you're holding up actually has your mother in it? Could happen, you know. It's not outside the realm of possibility, right? We see organized groups that smash windows and they break into small businesses, right? And people think that it's just property damage, okay? But somebody had to buy that. Somebody had to pay for that, and it's not always some kind of major corporation. You smash the windows in a mom and pop shop, you just set them back 6 months to a year worth of their profits, okay? That they are pretty slim as they are and that they've worked hard to do. What gives you the right to do that just because you're angry? What gives you the right to take that out on them just because you're pissed off? You know what? All right. So systematically destroying property is not freedom of speech. It's not freedom of protest. It's just against the law. It's crime, right? I think we can all agree on that, can we not? Attacking police or attacking counter protesters, right? That's nowhere protected in the Constitution of the United States. It's nowhere protected in law. You know, it has a definition. The definition is assault. That's what it is, assault. You know, depending on the severity of it, it might be manslaughter, or it might be attempted murder, or it could actually be capital murder if you kill a police officer. Okay? By the same token, police officers, nobody wants to kill anybody. They don't. Nobody does. Right? And I know with all the protests and everything that have been going on, and all the people on the left and all the outrage, people are screaming and claiming that this ICE officer, you know, murdered this woman in cold blood. He didn't. He didn't murder her in cold blood, and I guarantee you the last thing he wanted to do that day was pull the trigger of his gun. I promise you that. And if you've never stood in the shoes of a soldier or of a law enforcement officer, if you've never been faced with having to make the decision to take a life, you have zero idea what you were talking about. So once again, all right. So you have to understand, when you're out there and you're exercising your rights, you have to still stay within the law, right? If you break, let's say you have city ordinances that say you have to shut down by 10 o'clock and you have to, you know, the noise level has to be below a certain decibel level by 10 o'clock and all of that kind of stuff. Let's say that that's the city ordinance, right? Well, you have the right to peaceably protest, but not in violation of that city ordinance. The constitutional right, the First Amendment, does not give you the right to break other laws to instigate your right. There are other hours to protest. There are ways to protest that are silent, so you're not breaking noise levels. You don't have the right to do 99% of what you're doing. You want to see what a peaceful protest looks like? Let me show you what a peaceful protest looked like. This is the Million Man March. This was in the 90s.
From Baltimore, Richmond, Syracuse,
I want you to take a look at the grandiosity of this.
By midday,
Look
they
at
filled
the
the
amount
Mall,
of people.
From the U.S. Capitol all the way to the Washington
Can you
Monument.
believe this?
A stunning sight.
Just look
They
at
heard from
this.
scores
Look at this
of black
amount
leaders
of people.
and from the poet Maya Angelou. And at day's end, they heard from the man who called them here, Louis
I'm going to blow this
Farrakhan.
up here. We're going to
But
watch.
the real evil in America is not white flesh or black flesh. The real evil in
You see,
America
that
is the
is a peaceful
idea
protest.
that undergirds
A million people.
the setup
Actually, I think it
of the
wound up being
Western
more.
world.
I'm not sure on the exact statistics of
And
that.
that
But look at the
idea is
grandiose
Farrakhan
size of that.
talked directly to President
Right?
Clinton.
And there was
We
no
are
violence.
wounded people, but
There was no violence that day. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got sent to the hospital, right? Police didn't have to arrest millions of people. I'm sure there was a couple of little arrests here or there for a couple of people who might have got out of line, but nothing happened. They didn't burn down streets. They didn't burn down the Capitol. They didn't cause violence. They didn't strike fear in the hearts of people, right? Right? When people get scared, they don't give a shit what side of the aisle you're on. They're scared, right? They're scared that they're going to get hurt. They're scared that they're either going to get hurt by one side or the other, right? Or they're going to get trampled by those who are trying to flee, right? So you're not accomplishing anything. There's zero accomplishment here. One person with a sign is exercising a right. One person to pick up a brick and throw it through a window just broke that law. And he turned the entire assembly into no longer being a legal, peaceable assembly. You've heard the old saying, one bad apple can ruin the whole bunch. It does, and often. People will try to use the excuse, they'll try to say, well, it's just property damage, nobody's getting hurt. That's real liberal of you until it's your small business that's getting destroyed and burned to the ground. Right? Then you'll still be pissed off at the other side, saying that, well, if they hadn't started the riot, my business wouldn't have got burned down. No, dumbass, if you hadn't have been out in the street causing trouble, you and your group of friends, if you'd have let law enforcement do their job, and if you would assemble peaceably like the Million Man March, then you could get things done. This isn't going to solve anything. This is not going to solve anything. When President Trump got elected this term, right? Everybody was saying that, everybody was fearing that there was going to be martial law. But you know what? You are making it possible. You are making martial law possible with your actions. You are giving reason for martial law to be instigated. What happens if it gets instigated? Then you're going to sit there and whine and complain and say that you were right? No, you went out there and you made it happen. Quit manifesting it. Get your ass home, or get your ass on the side of the road with a sign, but do not block law enforcement. Do not engage, right? Speak your mind. Do that clearly, okay? Film, but do not interfere. Right? Yell and scream, bang your drum. Do not interfere. Stay out of the way. Do not interfere, okay? Jeez. How the hell did your mother raise you? Anyway, thanks for listening to me today.
You're listening to Uncle Sam Saves America, a patriotic show for the average Joe.